All good. We are live on Facebook now as well. And I think we already have 13 participants watching us on the Zoom as well. So hello and welcome to everyone who's joined us today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us here on this webinar. In particular, I want to give a huge shout out to our stellar lineup that we have. We have Cindy Mitchell, Margaret O'Brien, Sophie Fisher, and Talitha Devdas. Talitha, I think you prefer to go by Taz, is that right? So
I'm happy with either one.
Okay, no worries. I feel a bit starstruck today, I'm not going to lie, but I'm so excited to see where today's conversations go. But before we start, I'd like to begin by providing an acknowledgement of country. Currently, I'm in Victoria, I'm in Melbourne, I'm on Wurundjeri land. We have, our guests are all across Australia. So we've got Cindy and Sophie in Canberra, and Taz is in Tasmania, and Margaret is in Sydney. So we are meeting from numerous lands, not just this one country that we call Australia. And so I want to pay our respects to our traditional custodians, their elders, past and present. Having arrived in Australia as a migrant myself, and for many years what I learnt about Australian history only went up to 1788, was it? But it wasn't until much later on that I learnt that Australia has such a rich, diverse history that spans over 60,000 years. So this welcome to country, even though it is just a short part of and a small part of what we're doing, this small gesture, I believe it's crucial to reconciling the incorrect story that many of us have been taught. I also want to just point out there's a wonderful not-for-profit called Common Ground, started by a wonderful change maker, Rona. So if anyone out there wants to learn more about Indigenous history, I'd really recommend you having a look. We're not sponsored by them or anything. They're just a wonderful organization that, I loved watching their videos. So to introduce our guest today, first we have Cindy Mitchell. Cindy is the CEO of Millhouse Ventures in Canberra. I think if I was to have to list Cindy's accomplishments, we might just take up the whole hour. So I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can. I think in summary, what we can say is Cindy's got incredible experience across venture capital to policy to advocacy, but now, and she's also been an entrepreneur herself, is one currently in running Millhouse. But what she's doing now is taking all of her immense knowledge and wisdom and supporting the social enterprise ecosystem, supporting young entrepreneurs and change makers and the next generation to, I guess, do their part for our society. And so that's an incredible thing that she's doing. She's also on the board of the Social Enterprise Council of ACT and New South Wales, as is Margaret. So I'll introduce Margaret, I guess. So she's the CEO and co-founder of Young Change Agents. Margaret is passionate about education and youth empowerment. Her organisation, Young Change Agents, runs design thinking workshops for 10 to 18-year-olds, equipping them with the skills to solve problems utilising the social enterprise model. I think that's so amazing. And I love that Young Change Agents is all about empowering the next generation of young people to step up to be leaders. I'm assuming at this stage we're still probably recognizing the trend, which is that our guests are also passionate and dedicated to helping young change makers. So that's why it's such a pleasure to introduce our very own two young change makers here today, Sophie and Taz. So Sophie is the founder and director of Girls on Bikes ACT. This is a program for migrant and refugee women that creates a safe space and supportive space for fostering independence, mobility, and fitness and community. I love that. When I read that it's all about fostering independence and mobility, I was like, mobility through riding a bike. It's kind of like a pun. It's so much more than just riding a bike. It's independence and freedom they're gaining through that. She also serves as an non-executive director for YWCA Canberra, and she does an incredible job at promoting sustainable community-oriented solutions. And our lovely Taz, her smile is radiating through Zoom right now. Taz is the director of Future Isles, which is a consultancy facilitating social enterprise facilitation. Wait, sorry. I read that completely wrong. A consultancy and facilitation social enterprise providing solutions and empowering young individuals and organizations to achieve social change. Sorry about that, Taz. She's so passionate about supporting young youth changemakers, and she's traveled all across Australia delivering workshops on topics like leadership, entrepreneurship, creative thinking, and many more. It is so wonderful to have you all on, and as impressive as their bios are, and I had such a pleasure to meet them all individually before this, I think what stands out more than that is that all four of them have such authentic and genuine passion for what they're doing, and they're so keen on helping our society and our building this ecosystem. So that's why I know today is going to have such great conversations. Now, I've already been talking for a while, so I want to hand it over to our guests, and I guess the first question I have for them is I would love to know something about you that we can't find on LinkedIn. So what sparked that fire within you that made you want to dedicate your time, your knowledge and skills for the purpose of social change? So happy to start with anyone. Shall I pick, or is anyone, one of you would like to start off? Then go for it. I get the vibe that Margaret's ready to fire.
I've got multiple moments. Yeah, I think in terms of social enterprise, it was I come from a business background, but I spent a couple of years working in international development in Colombia. And I think the light bulb moment of social enterprise to me was I was working setting up some literacy programs with different community organisations, and I had to get all the bookshelves made. And there's no sort of IKEA where I was. So I thought, how am I going to get these bookshelves? And I found this local carpenter who took young boys off the street that were out of gangs, and he made, he wanted to provide them with skills. He just needed the clients. So it was my first engagement in social procurement. I provided the funding. He trained the boys, got them out of the gangs, and made all of our furniture for all of our libraries. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. The power of, so I guess I learned social enterprise first from a social procurement perspective, but I saw therefore that power of spending money on an organisation that had this built-in purpose baked into it, and to change the lives of these boys that I met, and I saw painting and sat alongside and painted them. So I had a very first-hand experience. And then, I was working with a whole lot of young people, so I then was able to start teaching them around social enterprise and using that as a method for them to solve problems. So that was probably my moment.
That's awesome. I had no idea that story. I personally had a similar experience where I was volunteering in India, and that's how I came to know about it. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Margaret. Taz, tell us about your story.
So I've always been obsessed with how you can help people, because I think growing up with my family, that's always been something that they've been focused on. And I was always thinking about, what can I do for my career? What can I do for my career? And, the typical sort of South Asian thing is go be a doctor. That's the way to do it. And I looked into it, and I sort of got to a point where I was like, I don't think that's for me. And around about the same time, I was part of a business competition, and they were really looking at how you address societal challenges through business. And I was quite young at the time. I never really thought about the fact that you could do that. And I just really enjoyed the concept that you could do something that generates profit for an economy, but also create an amazing change-making system. And for me, that was mind-blowing. And I'm now that person who has probably said the word social enterprise more than anybody around me ever wants to hear. And so I think that I've exhausted my immediate family, who are like, okay, we're done with this idea. But I think that it's something that people are looking for more and more in work. And the idea of being a social entrepreneur as well has always been something that I've been really passionate about. So I find the change fascinating, and I'm really glad to be part of this group of people and talking to amazing ladies here that also are looking at what that could look like in the future.
Thank you so much, Taz. That was amazing, and totally know what you mean about the usual doctor, lawyer sort of career, and then going against the grain. And then not only did you go against the grain of the traditional, MBA model, you were out here no, I want to do business, but I want to create change. So I'm sure that was something that was new that for your community and your family. And I'm glad you're exhausting them now.
It was totally new. I finished very sort of soon after I finished my degree. I moved cities for a volunteer role, and that was like, oh my gosh, I think this girl's gone mad, that kind of thing. And so I think it's taken this amount of time from when I finished uni to sort of now that people can sort of see, oh, this is what she was working towards. But at the time, it was very much like, whoa, why?
I love that, and I can't wait to get more delve deep into that career and that the experiences that you've had. Cindy, tell us about yourself.
I think you can probably find this on the internet, but one thing about myself is that I'm American, and I'm originally from Alabama, which is the Deep South, the cradle of the Confederacy, the home of the Civil Rights Movement. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was very much impressed on me that I am here because of what was done before me, because of the advocacy and the work of my grandparents' generation and my parents' generation. So I was always groomed for big things. I was either going to be a politician or I was going to be, in business. I was going to do some work in the community. There's always this expectation that you will serve no matter what you end up doing, whether you sell shoes or, you run for local council or you run for president. And I've always sort of carried that. But then I got lost in the wilderness when I became a venture capitalist. Really the thing for me, social enterprise is like this sort of siren that you can actually use business for good. And so it just tapped into that stuff that was all in my DNA and in my, just wanting to come out. And now I'm here, I'm like a pig in mud and I'll never leave.
That's so great. And I think, I think what I can say, having met you and having looked up to you for a long time, is like, you basically are a rock star of the social enterprise scene. Mm-hmm. So you have, I'm sure your parents, your grandparents all be proud that you made your mark in serving the community.
Thank you.
So Sophie, tell us about yourself and I guess something we wouldn't know about you.
Well, like the other panelists, I guess I've always had a drive to want to, help people and build the community. But often I did that as a contributor, as a follower to things that already existed, which is obviously a very important role to play. But then I kind of stumbled into social entrepreneurship with Girls on Bikes, in that I was working with a group of migrant and refugee women in our community, and they said they'd never had a bike and they'd never learned how to ride. And I loved riding. I only had a bike when I moved to Canberra. And I just thought, wow, should fix that. Let's do something about it. And I guess it was that process of identifying a gap and taking the leap and deciding to try and fill the gap. And that's how it happened 4 years ago.
That's brilliant. What an amazingly powerful thing to stumble upon, that you weren't even trying, and you've made such a difference. I think the common factor that I've noticed between the four of you is that it is more or less something that you stumbled on, but then when you found it, it almost seemed like, oh, how did I not realize this earlier? It just seemed so normal and natural, and like it was a place that you were meant to be. So it's like it's now reflected in your work and all the things that you're doing. So I want to ask then, like, in that, I suppose, journey of finding social enterprise, what was the initial, any hurdles or challenges that you faced in that? I'll ask Cindy. Yeah.
Look, I'm happy to go. Look, for me, starting my first social enterprise almost, 13 years ago, it was really like, who the heck are you? Particularly in Canberra. So trying to do this in a regional area where, if you're in the middle of Melbourne, it's easier to find your tribe, but trying to do this in a community where people are still like, what the heck is this? So what I dealt with in those early years of our movement in this region is, the sort of business people were sort of like, what is that? That's not you. You mean that's not real business? You mean you don't want to make money? I'm like, no, we have to make money. And then the charity people were like, what is this? You're trying to take away our, so that, that they felt sort of like, oh, well, we don't believe that the way you help people is by making money. Like there was this fundamental sort of tensions between that. And so here I am kind of in the middle saying, really, there's a space for us. There's a space for us. And, you know, but until basically the only way that I could sort of get like a shot in the arm was to go to Melbourne or to go to Sydney, which was a bit of, you know, expensive hobbies. But, you know, you just needed to be able to be with your tribe. And so very much what I have tried to do here in Canberra and in this region is to build our communities so that we can support each other in this work. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. But I do think that's evolved and evolving now.
Yeah, definitely something that's evolving. I think like I stumbled upon the term social enterprise just 4 years ago or something now. And even then it was like, I have really had to dig the internet to find it. But now there's so many resources available, such amazing organizations. So I think that social enterprise is really making its mark now in our community, which is great to see. Margaret, what about you? What did you find as like, because you first came across it in Cambodia. So then when you came back to Australia, were you still working in a corporate role at the time, or were you, what was that transition like for you? Oh, I think you're mute.
Yes, Colombia, not Cambodia, but yes, it does also. so a different part of the world. But yeah, when I came back, actually, I knew after I'd done that role that I wasn't going to come back and just work in industry and in business, straight sort of business anymore. So I joined Social Traders, who are an amazing social enterprise organisation that's actually really taken the lead on social procurement in Australia, as an advisor. And one of the things that I saw is that we didn't have enough of a pipeline of people coming through into those programs. So I'd been working with young people in Colombia, and I was seeing the pipeline of adult social entrepreneurs at the time, and this was 5 years ago. And I thought we need to build up a whole big groundswell of young people that understand this, because every single young person has a different lived experience and is able to identify a very different problem. So Sophie's obviously seen a particular problem, Taz has seen a problem, Cindy's seen a different problem. And that's what we need. We need all of these young people seeing the problems that they have lived experience in, and knowing about this model, because it's like a bit of a secret, I felt. Like if you don't know the secret, you don't know that you can be a change agent. And I also saw that it doesn't actually take that long to let people know about the secret. So I thought that's something I can do.
Yeah, and you're doing a wonderful job at it too. So Taz and Sophie, what about you two? As being young change agents, you would have quite a unique experience as well.
Yeah, I think definitely vibing with what Margaret and Cindy are both saying. And I think, Cindy, what you particularly said about finding your tribe has been something that I very much found. It's been really hard because, similarly, Tassie being very regional, traditionally back in the day, especially when I finished uni, there were a lot of traditional charities, a lot of really cool not-for-profits, and then there were businesses doing cool things, but that social enterprise concept was not here yet. And so I was always talking about it, and I just couldn't find how to get into it. Started a few things myself, and young and not really sure what I was doing, naive, didn't really always, didn't last, but there was some cool stuff happening. And so I went to work for a lot of not-for-profits and learned a lot down here in Tassie. And sometimes in Tassie, previously the vibe has always been, if you're a young go-getter, you'll often be asked, what are you still doing here? And there was this real notion of, why aren't you in Canberra or Melbourne or somewhere? And so my parents moved here as migrants in the 80s, and they are as loyal as you can be about Tasmania. And they were really determined that I should stay here because this land has been good to us and to have my mark. And so I was like, yeah, but how on earth do I do that? And so I think over time, the mindset's changing. And I feel really grateful because that tribe that Cindy was talking about has grown. And it doesn't feel like you're doing it alone. It feels like things like this are happening. And I run my business Futures Are with my best friend. And I get to work with awesome people like you, Bindia, and Nazia, and meeting all of you. And it's exciting because often you go work for an organization and they could be doing the best things in the world, but that doesn't mean that your values match or your culture matches. And I've found that I've worked on some really cool projects in the past as an entrepreneur, as a project manager, and I've loved them. But I think sometimes social enterprise becomes a necessity, because if you really want to create change, you have to create a safe culture that you can work in, that's going to be sustainable for you as a change maker, that builds you up and supports you, but also allows you to fully pursue the things that you think you can create change within this world.
Love that.
That's awesome.
Love that so much. And Sophie, tell us about your experience.
That's awesome. I just want to say for Taz, like talking about your tribe growing, I think that's so cool. But I also think the work that you're doing is obviously inspiring other young people to join your tribe. So I just think that's really cool. I think two things that really got me at the start were like initial resourcing and knowing where to go to get kind of like that seed funding to help to make your idea a reality, and finding that quite daunting because with money comes responsibility and accountability. And like Taz, when I started Girls on Bikes, I was young and kind of just feeling my way through and not really, just hoping for the best. And I think that links to the other key challenge, which was having the confidence to just take the leap and do it. I think the first year that we ran the program, I didn't tell anyone about it because I was just so worried that it would just fail and I would like let the people down that I was trying to help. And I look back now and I just think, oh, how silly, because even if it had failed, I would have learned lots of important things that I could have shared with others, or that would have made me better, on my next kind of endeavor. But actually, if I had have just been more open with people and, asked for help, I would have found that it would have been a lot easier anyway. So those are two kind of challenges that I worked through in the beginning of Girls on Bikes.
Wow, yeah, that's wonderful, Sophie. And I would hope that, I think now that there's the tribe is definitely there, especially in Canberra. I mean, I was in Canberra for the last few years, so I'd like to hope that young changemakers feel more comfortable now and would know where to approach. So on that note, I want to draw it more towards future focusing and like how you feel like the current environment is. So Margaret or Cindy, whoever would like to take this one on. So what do you see as, I guess, the future of social enterprise, or like the next hurdle that social enterprise is crossing now?
Should we swap round and our young change makers go first?
Yeah, why not? Sorry, I didn't mean to have the order.
Oh no, I would love to hear what they think, and maybe we can dovetail off that.
Yeah. All right, Taz, go for it.
Awesome. I think from my perspective, it's a lot better. I think that there's opportunity to learn more. Like you said, Bindia, there's also resources that weren't available before. Yeah. And I find that there are a lot of answers there are people you can talk to. And I like that when I go on LinkedIn now, most of my feed is of this nature. And I heard about Margaret's work randomly through LinkedIn. It just popped up because someone I knew was following what she does. And I just love that there's things like this that I can keep seeing. And there's great opportunities for different voices to start being heard. There's so much work to be done. And I think that I would love for it to get to a point sometime in the near future that if a young person is considering this as a future pathway, it's a really strong option, and that they can know that there's a future for them in this. I, alongside my best friend, and we facilitate the ABC Trailblazers program. And the ABC Trailblazers program is about young people from regional Australia who are creating change. And when we were talking to some of them earlier this year, pre-COVID, we were talking about the fact that they're awesome and they're already doing things that changes their regions. And we sort of said to them, would you like to continue this for your future? And many of them said they would love to, but they need to think about their finances and how are they going to sustain themselves. And we sort of said, did you know that you could get paid for this work? And they were like, nah, no one's going to pay us. Like that was the resounding answer. And I remember there were a few people from, I think Nazia was in that room. There were a few people from ANU, and all of us were just like, no, that's not true. They can get paid for this. But there's this still real mindset block that I think needs to change. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I think something that's often a challenge for social change makers is that we want to do it all. And so I guess morally, I still see social enterprise entrepreneurs being conflicted. Like, should I take a cut for myself, as in like just a bare minimum salary, or should I be investing this back into the business? Because that's what they do want to do at heart, but they also do need to survive. And it's sad to see sometimes social enterprises getting criticized on that angle, because it is a business model that is creating change, but it seems like sometimes people expect even more from us because we're trying to create change. Sophie, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Taz said about the beginning of the kind of mind shift in young people, and also definitely increased resources locally, certainly in Canberra. But I think also really powerful how connected you can be with people who are not just in your community, but nationally and actually globally, and looking at things that are happening in other cities and how they can be replicated and sharing lessons. And I think, there's been like kind of a few silver linings from how challenging the last kind of 6 to 8 months have been across the globe. It's that we've really kind of turned to that virtual connection and looking at how we can work better together, even if we're far apart. And so I'm excited to kind of see where that line of work takes us, and how that can improve the experience of young social entrepreneurs. Yeah,
absolutely. Margaret and Cindy, do you see that there's more collaboration happening between social enterprises now, or is it still working?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think by virtue of the fact of what we're trying to do, that we're purpose-oriented entrepreneurs, there is that desire and recognition that, look, it's about my purpose. It's not about, me trying to put myself out there. And if I need to collaborate, or if I need to find someone who has better skills. So I think as a sector, we tend more, toward collaboration. And I love the answers that Sophie and Taz had around the future. And for me, I think what excites me the most about the future are an increasing sort of recognition that you get young people when they're really passionate about a whole range of problems, climate adaptation, Indigenous advancement, refugee and migrant, LGBTQ, like you take them when they're really raw about that, and you say, now here's this tool called the market. You can learn about this tool, okay? It is one way that you can affect change, right? There are lots of other ways, but this is one tool. And, I've been really lucky here in Canberra. I've been in high schools, I've been in primary schools. What we do here at Millhouse Clinic is we work with University of Canberra students to let them do their work integrated learning placements in social and Indigenous businesses. And just for them to actually do, like, they might be a graphic designer or an accountant or whatever, but to see that, oh my God, I can be an accountant and contribute to this mission and get paid to be an accountant. Like, it just blows their mind. And it's not the same as trying to learn about social enterprise in a theory, in a textbook. You learn about social enterprise by doing it. And what I'm seeing increasingly, just so enamored with my colleague Margaret and so many other people who are doing this work of building the capacity of young people to play with these tools, but also teachers and parents, and community leaders, and people who empower young people to say, entrepreneurship itself is a potential tool for agency, for you to be able to intervene in these things that you're really passionate about. And that is an ecosystem play. That's what excites me. And I think very much we're in a good place here.
Yes, absolutely. On that note, maybe I'll share the Millhouse Ventures video.
Oh, I think Margaret, it's okay. We can put the link somewhere, but I don't want to mess up the buzz. Basically, it's a little mini. You can go to the Millhouse Ventures website. It's a little mini commercial where you can hear from some of the students who have been part of the Millhouse Clinic, and they're exactly what you'd expect. Like, wow, definitely check that out.
Yeah, we'll definitely share it on our Facebook page as well, because it's a wonderful video, and I love seeing that spark of happiness and excitement in everyone's eyes. So Margaret, you were about to say something, so I'll come back to you.
Oh no, you can tell Cindy and I spend a little bit of time together, because I was just about to say, I think that ecosystem, the ecosystem piece that you're talking about, I think that's what's happening, and I think that I see the groundswell of that from a sense of, when we talk about social entrepreneurship education, which Young Change Agents delivers, we will work within any regional area. It'll be the local council, the local entrepreneurs, the university, industries, local social, everybody, parents, teachers, schools. There's a whole little ecosystem around creating youth social entrepreneurship. And just even a beautiful example of that, on Monday we had the Vic Tech Schools, Telstra and ourselves finishing a third round of our coronavirus youth design challenge. We're in a time where young people, are sort of given a passive role in a massive challenge that we're being faced with at the moment, i.e., listen to your parents, stay home, wash your hands. But yet they're experiencing so many different problems around that. And so it's social entrepreneurship in some ways can be done at any time, but also it's heightened at times like this where young people are really struggling with all sorts of issues. And at the beginning, when we ran these kind of challenges, it was around missing birthday parties and not being able to exercise. And increasingly it's become around anxiety and loneliness and connection. So the issues change over time as well. And it just gives them, as Cindy said, it just gives them a tool. Yes, social enterprise is just one tool, but it's a very powerful one to be able to reframe a problem as an opportunity, and to work through that. But I think it's also, for us, it's also about the mindset, skill set, tool set, not starting a social enterprise necessarily when you're 10 or 11 or 12. It's knowing that you're capable of knowing what it is first, because that's the first step, knowing what sort of ways you can get involved, knowing the process, and feeling confident that your ideas could be good enough. That's in our co-design with young people, that's kind of the things that came up. So we're not at the stage of, when we talk, where lots of people ask me, like, how many businesses have been started, how many social enterprises have been started? That for us isn't the metric that we look at. But we've got to solve those problems first, the awareness, the confidence, the access, and the understanding of where to get support, so that people like Sophie, when you're starting, you can just hit the ground running, because you've got that. When you find that problem, whether it's when you're 16 or 21 or 50, you can have that reference point. Yeah.
So on the note of the ecosystem. Sorry. So go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, it's okay. I will forever be grateful to the previous CEO of the Foundation for Young Australians, Jan Owen, for inviting me to come along to mentor some of the Young Social Pioneer boot camps. Because for me, I was, like Margaret said, I was like, how many businesses do they have? Like, how many of these work out? And I remember just so vividly having the epiphany that we aren't building businesses, we're building people. And people who are, and it was just like, for me to know that that's the opportunity, is that these people will grow. Yes, some of them will, go be successful in that particular venture, but for many of them, it will be the next venture, or the thing that they then go to be employed, or they'll be entrepreneurs, or they'll do something. And it's like, but they're going into the world with these powerful skill sets. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the people that I'm going to see, in the next 10 years through my, investment fund and social enterprise program.
In 2018, I did the Young Social Pioneers program, and it was the very, very first time that I'd ever had this, understanding of a notion of exactly what you were saying, that actually your project doesn't matter at the moment, like it does, but in the grand scheme of things, it's about what you go on to do next and what you do in 10 years' time and how you sustain yourself. And it was mind-blowing for me, because at the time I was pretty tired and been working in my role for a little while, and I was like, how am I going to keep doing this? And it was just this sense of like, it's going to be okay. You care about important things. Here are people, we're putting good people around you, and this is what it looks like going forward. And it was life-changing.
And here you are.
I love that so much, what you just said about, it's not the businesses we're building, it's the people. Like, that's so powerful, that statement. So on the point of like awareness and ecosystem building, who are the key players in the ecosystem, and who do you think are key players, but maybe they don't know it? They don't realize how much potential they hold to actually influence change. Cindy, I'll pass it to you.
I'm looking at Margaret. I'm like, yeah.
Well, all of you are so capable of answering. So.
Yeah. Well, I think when we're talking youth social entrepreneurship, obviously we need to get the buy-in of quite a number of people, which is why I look so tired. I think there's some key areas, which is, our departments of education and school systems, which are starting to embrace, entrepreneurship. And let me just say that the school systems are embracing social entrepreneurship, which is very exciting. There's no question when we say our program is social entrepreneurship, why would we do that? We need it to be more commercial orientated. Not one teacher has said that to me ever. So I think that's a good point that is being done. I think obviously, as I mentioned, industry and the industry partners and people like that are key, and also other parts of government other than education. So Cindy and I are both on the board. Cindy's our rockstar chair person of SECNA, which is the Social Enterprise Council for New South Wales and ACT, but we're now creating these networks across Australia. So there's now there's one in Western Australia and Victoria, and Queensland's had one for ages. And I think that those networks are working to advocate to government. New South Wales, we're talking to to Treasury about getting more involved, and they're starting to back that network. Because as I mentioned before, I think going to my opening story, social procurement is the other side of it. So you can have all the good social entrepreneurs, but you've got to have the people buying. And so the understanding of what social entrepreneurship is, the power of purchasing, I think that's one of the real key drivers of building enough sustainability within those organisations, because you can be small for a long time. That's another thing. Like, you've got to get some good contracts and good work so to keep going, and especially the employment generating ones, like that's going to be really key to win some of those industry contracts. But a lot of the big companies now are looking at how they get even if they can't go straight to a social enterprise because their contracts are so big, how can they get some of their subcontractors buying from social enterprise? I think that's really key as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Taz and Sophie, I'm curious to hear from you about so parents obviously play a huge role in influencing their children. So when you guys went into this area of social change, and I guess initially I'm sure your parents might have not heard of it, or they might have been a bit worried, oh my gosh, what's my child doing? Is she going to make an income? So how did you guys get the buy-in from your parents, perhaps early on in the journey? And what do you think, what's something that I guess really changed your parents' perspective?
It's a really good question. I think that for, like I said earlier, my parents they live their lives trying to create change as well. So they've often done it through their church or through their work or whatever. And so the path that I chose to pursue was unknown to them. And it's taken a really long time for them to sort of see, I guess, that you can have an income doing it, and that I will be okay, I will have a future, all of those things that you worry about for your kids. But I think actually what I was going to say that started to change their mind was the last role that I was in was a pilot program from the federal government, and it was called Entrepreneurship Facilitators. And that program was specifically launched to support regions in Australia, 3 regions that had high levels of youth unemployment. And the whole idea was to help them to look at entrepreneurship. I think when I started in that role, one sort of, adjacent benefit of that was my parents also realised that, wow, governments are starting to care about this. And I think that role kind of changed everything, because in my region of northern Tasmania, we were chosen to have an entrepreneurship facilitator. And as a region, we're highly supported for people to start up here. There's the fastest internet in Australia. We've got multiple business support programs from all levels of government. And I think that sort of mindset change in my region helped my parents and the rest of my family sort of see that actually lots of people will pursue this. And I think, the government making changes in some of their programs and understanding that social entrepreneurship is a pathway is a big driver of change. So the Entrepreneurship Facilitator, the NEAS program, all allowing people to pursue that with government support, with mentoring, with even opportunity to, if you are a job seeker, to pause that job seeking process while you start to grow your business. It's an option, and that's pretty incredible. There aren't many countries in the world that have similar systems, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sophie, what about you?
So, my parents have always been very supportive, I suppose, but I've had a little bit of a different path to Taz in that I've always had separate full-time employment, and made sure that kind of employment has the flexibility for me to enable me to do the other work that I want to do. So, to be honest, I don't think my parents really even realised what I was doing until I don't know, it popped up in social media and they're like, oh, right, okay. But yeah. No, they've been really, really supportive along the way, and I guess they, similarly to that, have instilled those values of giving in me, and
Yeah, and I mean, I have no doubt that it's not that parents don't want to be supportive. It's more that initial hurdle of actually understanding like what even is this sector, and that's not, you know, that's not limited to just parents. That's broadly, even the industry is still coming to understand it, and like it's like, oh, it's not CSR, it's a model of its own, and that differentiation point coming back to social procurement, as Margaret mentioned. So Margaret, from your perspective of like, you know, often working with young people through the young change agents, what's the initial reaction of students when they first hear about this? Is it something that they've already heard about, or it's brand new to them?
Yeah, most of them haven't heard of it. Most of them don't know what entrepreneurship is. They're probably trying to just say it like we all are, we'll spell it. So it is all very new. We start our programs reflecting on, likes and dislikes and wish lists in community, and like really, using design thinking. So we're really starting, like the first half of the day, we're not even talking about enterprise or business. It's all about the problem. So by the time they've warmed up to that, then introducing this concept of business as one model for solving that, and then learning about different social enterprises and things through a game, they're able to then, they've already got an idea and they've got a vision of what they want to change. So you're just introducing a mechanism for them and then showing them how to put that into a business model. I think young people get it super quickly. Our judging panel, at the end of the 2.5-day program, we have a friendly judging panel, and they're always so surprised at the viability of the models. And
2.5 days.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the university lecturers that come in say this is like university standard for a lot of them. So, and they say, how long has this course been? 6 weeks? No, it's been 2.5 days. So I think young people, they're absolutely a sponge for it in some ways, but it makes sense for so many of them as those aha moments that we've all had. What they're lacking in the younger years is obviously the networks, the connections and confidence, and maybe the money. But they've certainly got all those other aspects that make really good entrepreneurs. And I think just on one point that what someone said before, but I just, in terms of the stats that are out, these enterprise skills that they're learning, we know that the jobs of the future, whether you're intrapreneur, as you said, or an entrepreneur, I had it written down because I knew that I wanted to bring it up, was that 63% of all jobs by 2030 will be enterprise skills intensive. Wow. So I think for parents, that's what it was, Sophie, when you're talking about your parents. For parents, we're also saying, even if they don't become a social entrepreneur, these skills are important for them just to get a job. The FYA report that came out said that, young people with enterprise skills are 17 months ahead of their peers in gaining full-time employment.
Wow.
So it's a mixture of, we can sell this either side, no matter whether you're very socially, environmentally conscious or you're a more sort of jobs, economic growth content side or in the middle. Social entrepreneurship actually fits across that whole spectrum because it's an economic imperative and a social and environmental imperative. So we can talk to parents in whichever way is needed.
We've got the pitch decks for all the connections.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, that's great. So on the note of like skills, I'm curious to know like what do you think is the number one skill that might be required in, I guess, social enterprise establishment over a regular business? I feel like you're all capable. I don't know who to throw it out to. Sorry. Yeah.
Look, I always say when I'm working with entrepreneurs that the key thing that I'm looking for is humility. And it's that because if you're trying to make a meaningful change in the lives of people, you actually have to talk to them and ask them what they want. Like you can't, the whole idea is that we're not trying to produce more sort of saviors. It is now, how are you going to come alongside a community, and how is your intervention going to work relative to all the other interventions that are happening in an ecosystem? So it takes the level of an ability for a person to kind of step outside of themselves, which, again, we're talking about enterprising skills, but also this is about compassion and empathy. Like, you really are talking about the skills of the future. I would say compassion and empathy are pretty high up there as well. And to do this work properly as a social entrepreneur, you really need loads of that. But it starts with this sort of understanding that you are an agent. So you are a change agent. You're not necessarily the person that's going to go in there and like do everything.
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
I watched a wonderful interview today with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, and he was talking about the same thing. He was saying how innovation is about understanding, finding the gaps in the market. Empathy is about understanding needs before they've been spoken. So what do your clients, customers, or the people you're serving actually, what are their challenges that they're facing? So he spoke about the same thing that you just said, Cindy, about how empathy is such an important leadership skill that's often undervalued or ignored. Yeah, so true. Sophie, what about you? What do you think is the skill?
Mine's actually similar to Cindy. I just love what you said then, Cindy. I think the first thing that came to my mind was collaboration and just thinking about not about yourself, but about what you're trying to achieve, because you're part of something much bigger and everyone's working towards this thing, whether it's, creating a more inclusive community or, quality or whatever it is. So just collaborating. And I think that's just one of the wonderful benefits of being a social entrepreneur, that you just get to build beautiful relationships with people and learn from people and have meaningful conversations. And so, I think collaboration is it.
Yeah, awesome. I do want to keep continuing, but I just wanted to mention, I'm aware that Cindy will have to drop off soon. She has a wonderful little one she has to go pick up, so that's totally understandable and that's so cool, fine. But for all our attendees who are watching, feel free to start shooting some questions through in the chat box, and so we can start answering those. Cindy, is there anything you wanted to mention before you have to head off, or?
This has just been fantastic. So thank you for inviting me to be part of this great conversation. And
we've loved having you. Thank you so much. And I know we could talk for hours more, but family is important and priority. Yeah. So continuing the conversation. So I'll hand it over to Taz. What would you say is an important skill that any young change maker should, I guess, work on or prioritize?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what you just touched on. It's about the priorities and that balance in your life. We all have families and we have people we love and we have to look after ourselves. And I think Cindy said it earlier, but often this is about how you serve. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in all of that, you kind of get lost and you think it's something you care about. And often it's really enjoyable work, even when it is tough. Mm-hmm. So being able to, at Trailblazers and the Young Social Pioneers, it's something that I saw a lot, that you get so caught up in the work that you forget to do those things to look after yourself and to look after the people around you as well. So I think it's something that all of us struggle with, and something to keep in mind when we speak to even younger change agents and people in that pathway. How are you going to continue this? How are you going to look after yourself? How are you going to find balance? And that it's okay to have fun. It's okay that even though you're dealing with some big weighty topics sometimes, it's okay to have fun and to take a break, and making sure you instill that really early on.
Yeah, it's very rare that you see a social entrepreneur taking a break, I think. They're always on a mission to do something, but it is so important, like you said, that we do look after ourselves and nourish our own mind and body and spirituality. So Margaret, what would be your advice for young people?
I mean, firstly, I love that. I find business fun anyway. So for me, work every day is fun. So luckily it is. I would say if empathy's been taken, which it has, and I would say that always as a number one. But I would say the second step is, I see a lot of people that have they found the problem, they have the empathy, they're a really good person. I think bringing the business side into social entrepreneurship is that you have to get started and you have to validate. And by getting started, I mean validating. And we've been validating for 5 years at Young Changemakers. Like, I never think that there's a stop to validation. And in some ways, if you're always piloting, you're just always learning and therefore improving your product. And so it's just a way, like, I think, don't be afraid. If you're either a young person watching this or somebody who's teaching or working with young people, like, to encourage people just to get started in the smallest way that they can. And, you know, I say when we started Young Change Agents, I didn't know that we were going to be a national, you know, education provider and, you know, have staff all over the place. But we just now, you know, I literally started with, is there an appetite for this? Will this help? And if we got paid to run if we got 5 paid pilots, they had to be paid because otherwise it wasn't going to be a social enterprise model. We could get the funding for it, you know, then I'll quit, you know, my other job and make it happen. And before we knew it, like, just chewing off that much meant that we created it. And then I felt like, okay, and when we looked at the results and it just never stopped from there. So, and I'm sure that's with you, Taz and Sophie as well. Like, it'd be interesting to hear what was your first, how did you start? But yeah, like, just getting young people to think, even though you've got this big vision, you don't have to do it all tomorrow. So what is that one thing that you could do this week that would get the ball rolling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that ties in so well with what Sophie mentioned earlier about her story getting into Girls on Bikes. She just stumbled upon it. She saw that there was a way that she could help somebody else, and she was like, I want to do it. And I love that so much, Sophie. And now look where it's taking you. Taz, I think I saw you unmute. So did you want to chime on to that?
I was just going to say, I think it's an incredible question, Margaret, because so remember I said earlier that I thought I could make change through business. That was my plan. And so I studied accounting. And because I thought that, you know, businesses often fail because they don't understand their financial practices, and that's what I could do. And I had this fancy plan to go get a great grad program in Melbourne, and then I would come back and do cool things in community organisations. And my plan got derailed in a really good way because I started volunteering for the Oak Tree Foundation, which is just now called Oak Tree, and that changed my life. And I ended up working for them for 6 years. And it was because of that work in Oak Tree, not necessarily the degrees that I'd studied or anything else that I'd prepared to do, that I ended up in my first role in youth facilitation. And I didn't know you could get paid for that. I thought it was just something you do for free, for fun. And that was the only way I would have been a fancy accountant somewhere, maybe trying to help in the way that I could. But that's what set me on this path. And it was only because of that volunteering. It changed my life. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. Can
I just add on to that? I think, Taz, that's a really good point. And it's something that I talk quite a lot to my social entrepreneur friends about, and you know, how do you encourage people to know their value? And, you know, a lot of us do go from being volunteers into kind of social entrepreneurship, and sometimes those conversations can be quite challenging, particularly if you're driven by this sense of just wanting to help, and there's almost a sense of it being you know, uncomfortable to get paid to help. So I think, like, yeah, shifting those mindsets, having those difficult conversations and encouraging one another is really important as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we'll have to have a whole nother workshop just on that, because it seems like I've noticed all of you have mentioned that is one of the big challenges that you go through. So we have a question from the audience from Akshat. The question is, how can democratic input such as participation of investors and customers be embedded in promotion campaign design? So Taz, I'll hand it to you.
I think it's a really, really good question. And I think that I can't remember if Cindy or Margaret that said it, but in the process of doing anything, designing anything, it's important to be considering who you're trying to work with, the community you're trying to collaborate with. And I think that it's smart. It makes sense logically. You know, when we're looking at both the pitch decks, there's a logical business case for making sure that you involve that voice in when you're creating a promotional campaign. But from an ethical standpoint, if you're helping people and you're wanting to have an impact, then you want to be making sure that you're addressing what it is that they're saying as well. And so I think that consultation process is really important, and working out, you know, what are you actually trying to do and what are people actually asking for, and then mirroring that in the campaign that you put out there. And I think that often Thank You Water has taken a really cool approach to this. And now they're not doing water, and they're doing that because as a response to their customer. and realizing that that's not actually something that the customer values in that way anymore. And I think that having that humility to realize that we came out here to make change in the world, we've done some awesome things, but it's now time to pivot. That's exactly that sort of democratic input where people have said something and they've adapted to that change and they've acted on it quickly. So I think there are loads of examples of how this can be done, but it's a big topic and it's something that we can definitely explore more as things sort of progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Margaret, you've mentioned before, like if a young person wants to do something and wants to make change, there is a lot of people who are out there to help them. So I suppose in the, I guess chiming in on like democratic input, it's that balance of, yes, taking in that input, but also knowing that if one organization doesn't see your words, then maybe there is still somebody else out there. Yeah, so Margaret, what's your thoughts on that, in terms of the participation of investors, perhaps?
Yeah, look, my sense is always this, like everyone has a different lived experience and then everyone sees the world differently. So what I see as a problem, other people don't see as a problem. And you know, and I've seen that like play out in every single workshop that we go to, because some kids, all they want to do is save animals, and some kids, although, you know, are really focused on the homeless or whatever it is. So everyone has a different thing. So investors will have that too. Government has it. Every single person. You're dealing with people, even when you talk about these entities. So yeah, we need everyone to participate, and you need to find those little mini tribes within the tribe. You need to find the people that care about that particular issue that you're speaking about. I think the more people we get involved, the better. And then find obviously that tribe and try and talk to them and partner with whoever you can, I say.
Yeah, I love that. And like, you know, nowadays there's more and more things happening. I mean, obviously right now it might be a bit hard because everything's online, but in general, usually there's a lot of like community events and networking events, so much that's happening that you can find. Another question that we've received is from Nicole, and Nicole's question is, what opportunities are there to bring together social entrepreneurs with more of a traditional non-profit perspective and community organizations together to help each other?
Yeah, this is a great question. This could be Nicole, this could be a whole panel. I think my 2 cents on it is that I think that there's a lot of not-for-profits who are thinking about starting social enterprise. I always think that it would be a great way to look at it differently, to say to a not-for-profit, why don't you try and find social entrepreneurs that are working, on the similar mission to your organization, and look at how you can support them. Because a lot of what social entrepreneurs need is the backing of, they don't have the finance team, the IT team, the marketing team. Imagine if they had the power of the services that exist within a lot of our not-for-profits.
Yeah.
The power of them together would be good. I think we sometimes go the wrong way. We say, as a not-for-profit, we should suddenly just try to be an entrepreneurial organization, and maybe the talent is out there. The talent is out there already. How do you attract the social entrepreneurial talent to come and join with you? Well, that would be my thought.
Yeah, I think that's great, Margaret. I think I agree with what you're saying, and that's kind of what happened for me. Was that a community organisation, YWCA Canberra, had a heap of small grants and kind of technical support for young people in the community who had these great ideas that they wanted to kick off and make happen. So I think that's already happening in some places and quite successfully. So very exciting.
Yeah,
that should be more out there, Sophie. You need to be a case study. We should get you out there more.
Definitely. Taz, what's your experience as like a social enterprise consulting firm? Have you found that there's still so many gaps for collaboration, or like is that a recommendation that you often find making to your clients?
Yeah, totally. I think both Sophie and Margaret have touched on it really, really strongly. I think the only thing I would add is that with the organisation that I run with my friend Futures Isle, we really went into this because we really just want to work on cool projects. And we were like, there's some stuff that we think we can see gaps for, but to get them off the ground, we want to do it with time and consideration. And right now we just want to work on cool projects. So we just consult to a bunch of awesome youth organisations at the moment. We do facilitation, we do program management. And what we tend to find is we're doing a lot of connecting between the youth organisations, which is super fun because having a good understanding of what's out there means that if there is a youth org who needs something or wants to talk to another youth org, we can kind of help to make those connections. And I think that everyone's out there trying to connect in some way. Some people are still in their silo doing their own thing, but for the most part, most progressive organizations are trying to connect. What happens though is we get caught in our bubble because we're so busy and so dedicated to the cause that often there isn't always the time to look up and see who else is out there. So I feel really excited for the place that I'm in at the moment, where we're still looking at what we'll get off the ground ourselves, but in the meantime, we're working on all these really cool projects that we can connect up.
I love that. I love that so much, that you're basically a walking directory. I think
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to make one point on that. I guess some of the bigger not-for-profits have also started what we call incubator or accelerator programs around that. So there is certainly the opportunity to tap into that. The good thing about those is that often they have the access to the beneficiaries. So for Remarkable is a really good one that's a spin-off from Cerebral Palsy Alliance, in terms of disability tech. But WWF has, an environmental one. Yeah, so I think that's a way that non-for-profits, I'm not sure, Nicole, if you're from a not-for-profit or you're a social entrepreneur, but certainly not-for-profits can think about how to incubate ideas through that kind of these, obviously they're larger, well-funded programs, but there's all sorts of different ways to do it.
Yeah, there's so many things out there, so many opportunities. On that note, I think we'll start to wrap up today's session. It has been so wonderful having you lovely ladies on. You guys are just so inspiring to talk to, and I just love how generously you're giving out your knowledge and that you're so ready to help others. So I encourage everyone who's watching right now to follow them on LinkedIn, message them. But I mean, as Taz said, they're all hard at work doing a lot of incredible things. So if they don't respond to you straight away, don't freak out. It doesn't mean that they hate you. They will get around to it. But I encourage you, if you're a young person watching, by young, I mean anything between 0 and 100. If you're watching and you want to create change, then the people are out there who want to support you. The opportunities are there. So reach out to one of these lovely ladies if that's the first thing that you do today. Yeah, awesome. So thank you all for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Sophie.
Bye.
Bye, Taz.
Thanks, Media.
See ya.